Buzz Radar is a company that visualizes social data. Why would you visualize social data? So exactly 2 years ago today, I was the director at a social media agency, one of those experts. And I'd spent 2 years there working on all of Nokia and Skype's global social media campaigns, trying to figure out what worked, what didn't work. And it was a fantastic time because they had tons of money and they threw it at us and said, figure out what works. And that was a lot of fun. It was really, really great. Sometimes we did awesome work. Sometimes I won't even tell you how badly it went. But it was really, really interesting. And one of the things that they did, that Nokia very kindly did, was give us access to every tool. They paid for every single imaginable data pulling social listening tool there was. So Radian 6 was the big one, Sysmos. I think there's a guy from Synthesio in here as well. And all of the tools, and we looked at all of them. And the big problem was is that me, being someone who ran campaigns, didn't understand anything. All the squiggly lines on the screen was just too complicated. It took an analyst to explain to me what all this stuff was saying to me. What should we be doing, and how does this translate? So we came to an idea that maybe we need to make analytics easier, take live data and make it more understandable for everybody. Because trying to get the attention of someone like the CMO of Nokia and make him look at data is near impossible. They have like 100 million things happening at the same time, and trying to get them to understand or look at something that isn't instantly understandable and actionable, it's not going to happen. So we built this prototype for Nokia while I was at the agency, and we built it out, and it went really well. And it was a social media command center we nicknamed Agora. And we put it in Helsinki and in New York and in Sunnyvale, and they spent an inordinate amount of time, money, and effort building this thing. And it was a really great project. And I said to my boss at the time, I said, you know, we should roll this out and do something else with it. And he was like, no, Patrick, we're an agency, we sell hours. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to shuffle off. And we landed here a couple of years ago in campus and started Buzz Radar. So we started with a very small Twitter wall, and we've built out the product bit by bit. Our first customer was Marks & Spencer's. I have a completely random connection that we managed to get Marks & Spencer's to believe in us. And we've bootstrapped the startup for the last 2 years, and now we have sort of 30 of the biggest sort of blue chip companies, and we've been building the product slowly and slowly and slowly. So I guess today we're going to try and tackle this from two angles. I can give you the approach from big brands and what big brands have done and how I've worked on big brand campaigns. But on the flip side, I'm very much like in your position as well, in that we are building up our own social media following at Buzz Radar and trying to figure out how to engage with our audiences, which is not easy because it's a B2B business. And how do we figure out how to really connect with people and drive sales ultimately, because we're all here because you know, at the end of the day, if you don't get sales, you're not going to get anywhere. So that's Buzz Radar, and I'll show you some fancy live data pretty soon. If you want to talk to us, those are those. So we're going to look at how to use data to drive sales, basically, through social, and how that's useful. So it's a data-driven approach to startups and social marketing. So the big one here is who is your audience? So really, really important. Your audience isn't going to just be one person. You really have to sit down and do a segmentation of what your product is, you think, and who the audience are. So breaking it down. So Buzz Radar, for example, has a bunch of different people. We know that CMOs like our stuff because it makes it simple. So we talk to CMOs differently. We also do a lot of event visualizations for events and stuff. So we need to be able to talk to event people and also social media managers. Now, the way that social media managers look at us and the way that event guys look at us and the way that CMOs look at us are completely different. So you have to really break down who you think your audience is and segment it bit by bit. I'm actually going to just change this so I can see my notes, because I'm not as good as Malcolm, who can do it automatically. Let's see if I can figure this out. that is completely not useful to me. No, come on, left, right. Oh, almost there. See, when I plugged this into my computer this morning, it worked flawlessly into my screen. Oh well, I'm going to wing it. We'll figure it out. So who's your audience? How do you segment it? And do all those things. So that's really, really important. I'll give you a quick example. She's the First is a charity. It's a startup charity, and what they try and do is try and get girls who are in the third world and try and get them into high school by improving transportation, sanitary, and things like that. And the way that they raise funds is by taking people in the first world who are in similar positions in high school or going to college, girls generally, and trying to engage those people into doing bake sales and charity runs and things like that. And but they also have another market, which is also tech companies. So you can see the first tweet is all about engaging with the fundraising audience that they're trying to engage with. And so they're targeting that at girls and highlighting their yoga events. The tweet here is much more about targeting the tech sector, and they've had really, really good traction with people like Mashable and those guys. So having that sort of dual use has been really useful. I've got to read my notes. It's impossible otherwise. So sorry about that. There we go. I can't win today. Let me see. I might go back to this bit. So we'll talk about the 3-word exercise as well. The big thing that we found was, and we didn't really crack this till last year, was how do you describe your product? And how can you make that as succinct and as understandable as possible? And does everyone in your team describe it in the same way? So, for example, when we started Buzz Radar, I was talking to Mark, my co-founder, and he would describe what Buzz Radar was, a relatively complicated product, in a very complicated way. And he'd go on and on and on. And I would be like, well, we visualize social data and engaging in meaningful ways. And trying to get your 30-second pitch down. It doesn't matter if it's for a VC or if it's for a customer or if it's translatable into 140 characters on Twitter. It's got to be really, really succinct. And actually, one of the best things we did was I did the Tech City News Elevator Pitch Awards last year, and they forced us to do this. They said, you've got to pitch your company in 30 seconds. And my initial reaction to that was, well, that's impossible. We do loads of different things for loads of different people, and it's really complicated. And what it forces you to do is strip away everything right down to the bare essentials. So what we try and do is basically think about your product, think about your company, and use 3 core words. Try and find the 3 core words that describe your product, because what that'll do is inform your content all the way through. You've got to have a unified approach to your brand, and then you've got to make sure that everyone else is on the same team and saying the same things. So, for instance, Nikki, our comms director, who's meant to help me with this, but unfortunately she's in New York. She's in New York, and we have Andrea in LA. And if they're telling people different things about our product and what they are, then it can be very, very confusing, and you don't have a unified message. They're also all using the Buzz Radar Twitter account as well. So if you have a different message from different people, it gets a bit confusing. So essentially what you want to really try and do is unify that message. And you would not believe how many startups I've talked to, and I've talked to one founder and they've said one thing, and another founder and they've said something similar but not quite the same. So sort of unifying your message is really useful.
What are your 3 core words?
Visualization, capture, and beautiful. So it's about capturing data and making it beautiful and live, I guess. Nikki, our comms director, who's recently come on board, she was the comms director for Social Media Week, which is an organization that sets up biannual events in a whole bunch of different places in New York and London, Bogota, doing social media events, a bit like this actually. And basically, they have, again, 2 audiences. So it's this whole thing about looking at audiences and trying to figure out who they are. Social Media Week, for example, they have 2 audiences. They have an audience like you guys who want to know about social media and who come here to learn. And then they have another audience, which is speakers. They both have completely different outlooks on life. Ones want to learn about things, and the others are like, well, how can I use this opportunity to broadcast what I'm doing, and how does this generate revenue coming in our way? So this is a really good tweet that is really interesting, because what it does is it does both things really well. Dear Facebook, you have a responsibility to inspire us to be better, more open and innovative marketers and human beings. So Michael Lazzaro is the guy who found Buddy Media and sold it to Salesforce, I think for $1 billion. That was, he had an open letter to Facebook. So what that does is inspire speakers to get involved, but also engages the audience. And it was a really good, sorry, it was a Facebook post, sorry. And then I guess one of the really useful things is to start small and use feedback. Right. Again, a lot of the things Malcolm was saying is really smart. We've been very quiet on social media to start with, because we've been trying to figure out what our value proposition is and really try and finesse the whole thing. And when we started 2 years ago, we had one screen out the front of Google Campus, which was a Twitter wall, a word cloud, and a top 10 most talked about chart. And I think we had some photos on there as well. It was a super, super niche product, and it was very, very simple. And then we built more visualizations one by one. But what we used was customer feedback. I think it's probably at this point important to say that Buzz Radar's success has been in social, but not electronically. It's been via word of mouth. So what we've been really, really lucky and really successful with is that social media managers and CMOs have talked about us face to face, and then that has generated it. So you should never forget the sort of non-electronic version of word of mouth. It's super, super powerful. So we used a screen out front, and we got people talking about us. And then we'd get the odd tweet, and we'd retweet that, and then people would start finding us. Because for our B2B business, it's all about trying to find the key decision makers and get them to sign off what is a pretty big PO. So engage with them, get them involved, and then sign off. So it's filtering down from a huge amount of people to a very small amount. So it doesn't matter whether it's a social media campaign, whether it's your product, or any of those things. It just means that you've got to start small, keep it really, really simple, and then use customer feedback to grow. So when Marks and Spencer's looked at our product, they were like, oh, can you do this, and can you change that, and can you make that? And we're like, oh yeah, quick, we'll program that in, and oh, there you go. And we built up the product little by little like that, quite fast, but user feedback is incredibly smart. The other way we were, a lot of our competitors have gone is they've come up, rolled out a big product, and they've let all their engineers and their analysts and their experts do the thinking. It's a terrible idea, because what ends up happening is you have this big product, and it's very slow and hard to change and difficult to move. And what we've done is just use our customers as all our idea generation, which is cheeky, but it works really, really effectively. Here's a good example from someone. Charity Water are a really great charity in the US, and the guys at Bebo helped them build what was a very simple campaign structure. So it started off as this thing, a very, very simple tracking. You could embed something onto their website, and you could basically donate, and it would track how many people donated to it. And then you can see that they took in user feedback bit by bit by bit, and then they grew it into something that is much more, is one of the most interesting sort of campaign donation tools I've seen. in that they've got really, really nice metrics, and it really motivates people to start donating. So one of the things that we do that's a little bit different to everybody else in our market sector is we work in real time. So we visualize all the data and we broadcast it out live. And the reason we did this is because Twitter especially, and Facebook to an extent, is a really fast place to make a conversation. So within 15 minutes of a negative tweet or an interesting tweet, you've got a window of about 15 minutes to answer that tweet and to gain momentum out of it and to gain some sort of value out of it. You get a bit longer, you get about an hour on Facebook before it generally moves out of people's feeds. And so being able to jump onto events, it doesn't matter if it's the World Cup or if it's Wimbledon or if it's an event like this, being able to tag on to little bits of things like that are really, really useful. So being able to look at data fast is really, really important. I'll give you a big brand example. This is a boring tweet. I shouldn't say that. Adidas are one of our customers. We just built them a giant social media command center in Paris, which then currently all standing in front of. So it's a lovely tweet. It's fine. But from the slopes of Bristol to the podium in Sochi, history maker Jenny Jones now. So this was at Sochi. She won the gold. They had this tweet out within 2 minutes of her winning the gold medal. And they got a huge amount of traction because it was at the right moment at the right time. And the speed of that was what made that tweet successful. So being able to capitalize on events and jump onto things in certain ways is really useful. So speed is a really, really valuable asset. Social is by far the most effective way to sell something right now. And there's a great study from Nielsen that says that people are 5 to 6 times more likely to buy something based on a peer-to-peer recommendation, even if they don't know somebody, than just staring at an advert. So using recommendations is super valuable, and a lot of the stuff that Malcolm was saying about how he got people using his hot pants and then posting onto Facebook and onto Twitter reviews, it's gold. Really, really smart, because if you can get people engaging in your product and talking about it and giving you honest reviews, it's super valuable. Partnerships. So we've been really lucky at Buzz Radar in that we've formed some really great partnerships. Our first was with Cannes Lion. So next week there's a big advertising festival. We knew that was our target audience. So a couple of years ago I approached the head of Cannes Lion's marketing and said, your social media sucks. Can we help you? And rather than hit me, which is for about 5 seconds what I thought he was going to do, he said, yeah, that sounds really good. So what we did was put a giant screen up and visualize some of their social media data in the busiest area of Cannes Lion, and that really generated a lot of traction. And we did a barter deal. There was no money exchanged, and we got in on their press releases, and we used the bigger brand to basically piggyback onto the back of. So we gave them something they needed, and then off the back of that, we gained a lot of traction. And we gained a lot of traction with the right audience, which was absolutely key to us. We've done the same thing with Campus. At the beginning, I think it's September 2012, we said, can we put a screen in the lobby? It would be really, really useful, and hopefully you'll like it. And they said yes, really kind of them. And we put it behind reception, and it churned out tweets and some stats and some interesting facts and figures in real time. And then BT wanted that screen, so we took it away. And everyone got really annoyed. The front of Campus was like, where's the screen? Where's it coming back? And I'm like, I'm really sorry, I ran out of screens. I had to sell it. But you know, you can always get one, and we'll figure it out. Campus then went and said, well, this is really valuable to us, and they became a customer of ours. So we now have 3 touch screens and some other screens knocking around, which are really, really fun and useful. So sometimes it's really interesting. Partnerships turn into customers as well. And I will say that last year when we did Cannes Lion, the first year we did it for free. The second year we did it free for the organizers again. But then Adobe and Clear Channel came on board and said, we want some of that. Can you go do it? So partnerships are really, really useful. You know, if you can get a little bit of face time with the right people, see if you can find the right fit, they are mega useful. And I would say that for us, that's probably been the single biggest thing that's been really useful. Now we have partnerships with Clear Channel, with Twitter. So we visualize all of Twitter UK's data. We're installing a mission control system in their brand new building that they're moving into on Monday. So that's really exciting. And we still do stuff with CAN and Campus. So it really does help you get onto a bigger stage. And even if you're getting a tiny percentage of the focus, it doesn't matter because the audience is much bigger than you'd be able to get hold of anywhere else. We've talked a lot about the positive stuff in social media and how useful it is. It can backfire really badly. A lot of my time at Nokia and Skype, and we did a lot of stuff on Mars as well, was based on getting people out of trouble. And it can happen to big companies and it can happen to small companies. I'll give you a really quick example. I went to see a very well-known retail bank about a year ago, and I sat in what was called their innovation lab, and it wasn't very innovative. But they sat there and they sat next to me and said, look, we've got a social media monitoring tool, and frankly, we hate it. We hate listening to all our customers bitch and whine about how much they hate us. Why do we don't like, why would you want to put all this data on big screens and let the whole company see how much everyone hates us? It just seems like a massive downer. And you know, we tried to explain that, you know, in a crisis, and you might need to be able to deal with things, you know, in a collaborative way rather than just staring at a laptop. And that trying to create this this culture of listening is really, really valuable to bigger organizations. And they were like, yeah. A year later, I get a phone call. We need to meet you now. So 2 days later, we met here, just around the corner, and we showed them our new stuff. And I said, out of interest, why are you getting back in touch with us? It was we had this door slammed in our face pretty badly. And said, well, we'll tell you a story. Basically, they had a guy down the road in Bow try and take out 50 grand out of their bank. And because they'd changed some processes, the guy couldn't get 50 grand out of his bank. He then went on, he got picked up by a journalist, and it was on the Today Show about how he couldn't get his 50 grand out of the bank. It wasn't a big deal. Someone tweeted that, and it got picked up by a liquidity expert in the States. And he said, well, that's kind of interesting because you can mark the liquidity, and if this guy can't get his money out, it's interesting. And they kind of misinterpreted the story. And then another guy who thought it'd be hilarious then photoshopped a queue outside this particular bank. So it was all quite funny. No one was taking it very seriously. And then overnight, it got to Singapore. And the joke didn't translate. There was a run on the bank in Singapore, and it was a very, very big deal. So all of a sudden, what was something completely innocent turned into literal queues outside of a bank. And it was only because the social media manager who was in the UK, he was meant to be on a fun run, and he hurt his ankle. So he couldn't. So he just checked what was going on. So he looked at his Twitter, and he was like, oh, crap. So, and literally, they had to pull everyone in and try and fix that problem really, really quickly. But they said it was like they said they were leaning off the edge of a train platform with a train coming, and this guy pulled them back. And that was the CEO of one of the world's largest banks. So it can go badly wrong. And it doesn't matter if you're a big company that no one wants to talk about and it's all negative, or if it's a small company. You know, it can be dealt with really well and really badly. So here are a few sort of guidelines. This is another horror story. So McDonald's started doing this thing called McD Stories. And again, you know, social media departments, and this is a little while ago as well, but social media departments inside of big brands were acting a bit like startups. So because you guys have got a lot of autonomy and you can do a lot of different things very quickly and easily, basically, this is what happened to them. They just said, well, we'll do this campaign. There wasn't a huge amount of thought put into what could happen. So they said, well, we'll throw this up. And then the feedback was stuff like, one time I walked into my McDonald's and I could smell type 2 diabetes floating in the air and I threw up. Hashtag McD Stories is another great one. It was one of my favorites. ate a McFish and vomited 1 hour later. Last time I got McDonald's was seriously 18 years ago in college. Hashtag McD stories. And they got loads and loads and loads of these. And they didn't deal with it. They didn't address the problem quickly enough, and they didn't take it as a joke, or they deleted tweets, and it just got very messy really, really quickly. The best way to deal with a crisis, we found, is first up, mea culpa. Really sorry. Totally hands up, take ownership of the problem, and promise people you're going to try and rectify it as best you can. The second thing you can do is take a little bit of sense of humor with it. So this is American Red Cross are an incredibly social brand and very smart, and they're one of the first guys with a command center as well. But everyone has a bad day. So this guy was using a great tool, Hootsuite, but he hadn't logged into his account. And I'm guilty of this as well. I've sent tweets out on the Buzz Radar account under my name, and it's not fun. Thankfully, nothing as bad as this. Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Heads Midas Touch Beer. When we get drinked, we do it right. Getting lizard. It's the American Red Cross. So, and they dealt with this brilliantly. We've deleted the rogue tweet, and generally we wouldn't recommend deleting tweets. I think it's a terrible idea, or posts, because it's like adding lighter fluid to a bonfire. We deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured, Red Cross is sober, and we've confiscated the keys. So they've kept it light, kept it funny, and then they've dealt with all the responses, like people retweeting this, and said, thanks for turning our Twitter mistake into a good thing, and thanks for Dogfish Beer to helping out. So they reached out to the beer manufacturers, and they had a conversation, and basically they took what could have been a very negative situation, made light of it, went mea culpa, and turned it into a hugely positive thing that actually drove a lot of positive advocate conversation around them. So that's crisis, I guess. And so use data to guide you but not rule you. I think that's probably the one thing we would say is that we deal with a lot of social media analysts and a lot of social media managers and CMOs, and they're looking at huge, great masses of data and going, oh, this works and that doesn't work. And our theory on that is it's really good. Analysis is very important, but use it as a rule of thumb, because your gut instinct is also pretty good as well. So basically, if you have a gut instinct, try it out, test it, and look at the data and see if it backs you up. And that's the best way to behave. But if you go strictly by the numbers, you're going to come up with very uninspired content, very uninspired things. And also, data throws up anomalies. So a great one is that I heard recently was you've heard of the dating site OkCupid. Anyone heard of that? So OkCupid did a bunch of research on all of their dating profiles, and they noticed that they had a thing where they were like, there was a blog post on this is how you get loads of people to view your dating profile, and then one of the things on it was don't put pictures of your abs. Like if you're stacked, don't take photos of you looking ripped and just your abs. It won't generate anything. And then they went and looked at the data. Data was that girls clicked on guys with pictures of abs as their profile picture the more than anyone else. So the data can throw you off. And obviously that wasn't the messaging that they wanted to send out either.